Well, is it time for our main topic? How proud we
I think
are?
it is.
Yeah, we're so proud of
Aw.
ChatGPT for growing up and getting A's on all the law school exams. And interested that this study, which I'll have you walk us through, Jen, is so fascinating. And coming out of the University of a bunch of scholars at University of Maryland Law School, who I don't think I know any of them, but what a really interesting paper. Maybe you do know them. Tell us about it.
I don't know them, but I'm glad to know them now, and I'm definitely gonna follow their work because I love what they're doing. I'm so proud of our little ChatGPT. Like you said, I think 3 years ago, it was only beating 10% of test takers on the uniform bar exam, and through this study, we've found that the new reasoning models from OpenAI, particularly O3, got 3 A+ grades on law school final exams, and this is the first time that we've seen a generative AI platform be able to achieve this. And the way that they structured this is these professors, I think there are 3 or 4 of them, they have been tracking ChatGPT's performance on their law school exams since GPT 3.0, I believe. So they've gone through the latter group of the first family of models, and now they're testing these reasoning models. So this has been a huge improvement over the first few trials they ran with GPT-3 and GPT-4, where the models received mostly C's and B's. And as I mentioned, O3 got 3 A pluses, 1 A, 1 A minus, 2 B pluses, and 1 B. Maybe we should take a second for those listening who don't really follow this and know the difference between a reasoning model and these earlier models. But the architecture is a little bit different, and the way the models process information is a little bit different in the sense that these earlier models were spitting out essentially immediately the most likely response to your answer based on all of the data that they had consumed, and just trying to guess essentially what the next most likely word would be in the output. These reasoning models, on the other hand, essentially have internal scratch pads that are transparent. You can see what they're actually doing when you ask them a question. But those scratch pads are very similar to what a human test taker would do. So they get the question and then they're writing on scratch paper the different approaches, crossing out some things, going back and revisiting things, trying different approaches before the final answer gets to you. So these are the models that are achieving these great outcomes that are matching or beating the top students in at this law school, in these professors' classes. I thought there were a few, like, super interesting things about this. One is that it got a B in administrative law, which was actually my favorite class in law school, weirdly. But the reason I know, it's very weird. I don't know why I loved admin so much, but maybe I loved admin so much because I love the Chevron doctrine so much, and once I understood Chevron, it was pretty easy to understand a lot of administrative law. And the reason O3 got a B in admin is because its training data cut off before the Loper Bright case, which of course was the Supreme Court case from last year, I believe, that overturned Chevron and essentially upended a lot of administrative law doctrine. So if it had actually had access to the most relevant recent case law, I'm sure it would have also performed in the A or A plus level. The other grade of a B plus in its secured transactions, which was a class I did not enjoy, it came because, the researchers didn't prompt the model correctly, and they failed to give it the instructions on how the answers should have been formatted. And the last really interesting thing that I found about the study was they then ran the test again in the torts exam by giving the model all of the access to the professor's notes, which were like 70,000 words worth of notes about torts. And they hypothesized that the model would perform better, but actually it performed worse than when it simply had access to the case law and the syllabus. And the theory is that too much text, or there's other research that shows that too much text in a prompt can actually degrade AI reasoning abilities, much the same way that a human having too much information isn't really able to focus on what's relevant. And so I thought the whole thing was incredibly interesting, but I would love to know what you thought about it, Bridget.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I had the same thought about the overload. First of all, we have found that when some of the AI systems we're building, we can we when we build with our internal handbook of knowledge about, say, a particular dispute area. We're seeing, especially when we build a multi-agent model, the performance really high performance. If you add basically, a bunch of background case law in that area, it degrades, it's worse. And I do think it's like it does feel it's a little bit like when I took the bar exam, I took New York and there were, I don't know, 127 different subjects. I mean, I think it was more like 27, but it felt like 127. And I hadn't even taken some of them in law school because I don't know, I took the courses in law school that sounded interesting to me. And so I had a lot to learn. And I was definitely hearing the pitch from all of the different, courses. Barbie's pitch was like, no, you don't wanna learn any more than exactly the things that we know you need to know for this exam. Like, there's a whole lot more you can learn about every one of these legal subjects, right? There's, like, fascinating history and, like, all the gray areas of the doctrine, but Barbie's like, "Nope, nope, you need to pass an exam. You just need to know these 10 things, when you're doing evidence or these," and I think I think the model is completely right, right? Like you could go deep on all of those subjects and you might have a much harder time passing the bar exam. Same with law school exams. So I think it feels actually quite human to me to have that happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like, I we've talked about this before, how we've sort of, like, crossed this Rubicon where we really do work alongside AI, and sometimes I've switched from comparing AI to humans to comparing humans to AI. So I feel like studying for the bar exam or studying for a law school exam to me is like grounding your brain in the knowledge or like using retrieval augmented generation, and you lock yourself into a room for 2 or 3 days with your horn books and your case books and all of these things, and, like, you don't want any more information in your brain. You really just need to retain that information and then execute on the reasoning of, like, the issue spotting, applying it to the facts, and then writing in the way that you've been trained, but everything else in your brain at that point is not that helpful. So that it does make sense to me in a certain way. Um, but in other ways, it's sort of counterintuitive because you would think, like, the more knowledge that you have, the better you would do on an exam. It'd be interesting to see how a law professor would do on an exam, like, having that deep level of expertise, whether they actually would do worse.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Give the University of Maryland torts exam to a torts professor in another law school and see how they do. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
as you know from the study, in the courses it got an A plus in, it performed as good as or better than the very top student. So it's pretty stunning, right? And it's O3. It's a frontier model. It's not one of the legal models. So I mean, that's really interesting as well, right? What what does it mean for the legal specific models? I mean,
Right. Right, and what does it mean for '05, '06? I mean, if it eh, if it's getting an A plus already, it seems to have almost achieved, like, AGI in the law school exam context, at least.
yeah. So my first thought was like, okay, University of Maryland is doing some really cool work. I wonder if this paper comes out and they're at a faculty retreat right now going like what do we do now? Like what is the purpose of law school? How can we make sure that given what we charge students, we are teaching them what they need to know in the future? If all of a sudden now they're going to have their, AI hologram next to them who can do all of the things that we used to teach law students to do, like, what should we be teaching? And I mean, I think that there have been critiques of this kind of the sort of law school teaching style of a semester long class with one assessment at the end that's a closed book assessment, something that doesn't happen in legal practice, right? We actually get to look things up before we have to make decisions about how to help somebody solve a problem. So there've been lots of critiques of that for in lots of other ways. But this is a new one, right? This is like your system might start to seem silly. So or I was saying to you before, like old very old fashioned, right? Like it's like ye olde Shopee of law schools. Like it's like ye olde law school is going to give you ye olde exam system, and then you'll have ye olde training. I don't know. What do you think it means for training law students, training lawyers? Like will this study, do you think all of the law faculty around the country are like at a secret meeting right now figuring out what to do?
I would like to think they are. I doubt it. Um, I There's nobody more vocal and critical about the first semester and how little formative feedback we get, how unrealistic the testing conditions are as compared to what you're actually doing as a lawyer. And I've been sort of, like, going over in my mind what the implications of the study are, first for first year of law school. Like, what you just said struck me, which is, does it just start to seem silly when you have students like, imagine 5 years from now having a 1L and you're like, "This is what you're gonna be asked to do," and like, I would think that their thought would be like, We've been able to do this with a machine for 5 years now, like, this is what I'm being tested on." At the same time, I know that, like, in law schools, what they do is they'll disconnect you from the internet, and you'll be on a computer typing your exam, but you won't have access to any of these reasoning models. So it's definitely like, when I fed this into ChatGPT and asked for questions, it asked about cheating and those kinds of implications. I don't think that those are actually really a concern, because I think law students across the board, by and large, are rules followers, and the technology exists to cut them off from being able to cheat. Um, but I guess the question is, do these skills matter? The skills of being able to read a fact pattern, look through it and scan and spot all of the issues at play, the legal issues, recall the case law you've read in your classes and what they all stand for, and apply that law to those facts and write a conclusion about what it means legally. And I don't know the answer to that, because I could see arguments on both sides, and maybe the argument that says it still matters is that this is foundational, and even if machines can do it better than students, it's still a part of forming your ability as a lawyer to be able to understand the law and why your client's situation means something in the context of that legal framework. On the other hand, why does it matter? Does it only matter for the development of a lawyer's mind, or does it actually have any real value in practice once a machine can actually do this? And I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I have so many different reactions and thoughts. So one is, it does seem to me that we're always going to want to make sure that we're producing new lawyers who at least who understand kind of the architecture of the law. Like, what are the sources of law? What's public law? What's private law? What are the remedies that, what are the different like rights and remedies that people have available to them? So like what I think of as the architecture of the law. How does it operate on our lives and on our institutions? Because without understanding the architecture, even if you have the super intelligent um, you know, um, AI hologram next to you, you won't be able to work well with your AI hologram to help it, like, help it help you with a client's problem. So I think we still want lawyers who understand that architecture. I don't know that we can't do better than a memorize it all, closed book test issue spotting way to be confident that lawyers understand that architecture. That feels short-sighted to me, or like a lack of imagination or creativity. Like, yes, I know we've done that for a couple hundred years, but as my friend David Slayton, the court administrator at LA County, says, just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean it's not incredibly stupid. I mean, it might be stupid, right? There might just be like a better way to like teach the architecture, and we probably could use this technology to help teach the architecture. And maybe it's using your AI partner from the beginning to help you spot the issues and work together on like what they are. And you might say back to your AI partner, is that right? And I mean, I see one and two, but I'm not sure three is there. It seems to me there's something like kind of the way I work with it now on problems that I don't understand yet, right? So I guess I'm just not sure that the way we've always done it is the way to do it in the future. I also don't know why we wouldn't sooner rather than later want to be able to make sure new lawyers, law students understood how to work together with the technology. I mean, I keep thinking about we're seeing more and more studies in the medical profession that the AI is often better than even the doctors using in diagnosing certain illnesses or disease. And I can't imagine doctors saying, well, too bad, so sad. We're not going to use it because it's not good for doctors somehow. Like, if it's better if you get better outcomes, and my guess is we're going to get better outcomes now that they're getting A pluses, if we work with them, like then without them, why wouldn't we just figure out let's start training for, what's obviously coming next, which is going to be some workflow where we're working together with the technology.
And then sort of like shifting the perspective from the law professors and the students to the future employers, right? And we've talked about this on panels with Andy Perlman, about the market constantly says that it wants tech-enabled law students and graduates, but it doesn't reward the schools that actually prioritize that. It rewards prestige and brand. So now I'm imagining a world where you go to a prestigious school, you have straight A pluses, which nobody has, but let's say straight A's, a couple A minuses, maybe an A plus. You write onto law review. These are the things that in 2020 and before, like, would make you just exceptional and the person that everybody had to have because nobody has those skills. And now an AI could draft a law review comment in minutes. It can get A pluses on exams when even the most talented students can't. So if you're an employer, doesn't everything start to break down around the way that you think about recruitment, or shouldn't it? Um, as you sort of start to think about, like, if these skills are not the skills that we need to add value to our firm and that our clients are looking for and willing to pay for, um, what comes next? And what you said, Bridget, about, like, spending all this time cramming our heads with knowledge and being stressed out about this one exam, like, that's a lot of energy from really, really dedicated people, that if that were to change significantly, you have a ton of room and space to put something much more robust, or as robust in a different form in its place. I guess, like, the huge blinking red light is, like, what is that thing? What are those things?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be really interesting. I think Andy Perlman's right. Like, it's gonna take some signaling from the places that hire law students that they wanna see more. I mean, I have to say, I think the grades and the law review were just, a signal that that person was going to be able to be, successful at the kind of highest level of practice. It's not like writing a good comment doesn't really make you like the best, like a really successful deal lawyer at, a global law firm. It just but the idea is those were signals that you could be that person, right? Even among all the people who had those credentials at the end, they don't all end up as, a partner at a global law firm. Many of them end up going into public interests. Many go into academia, right? They go different directions. Some quit altogether and run amazing businesses, like creative lawyers. But yeah, I feel like this is another one of these times. I've talked about this in other contexts where we have stakeholder silos in our profession that are not serving us well, because I mean the law firms are having a lot of conversations about this. I assume the law schools are. I don't know that they talk to each other enough to figure out the kind of collaborative solution that I think our profession needs at this time.
Thank you for tuning in to 2030 Vision, AI and the Future of Law. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Stay informed and inspired as we continue to explore the AI-driven future of the legal profession. We'll see you next time.